Hi everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder. Today we're cracking open Mitsubishi UFJ Financial Group's annual report. It's like trying to understand a dragon, but instead of fire it breathes out numbers. Hopefully we will make it less boring. If you enjoy making sense of corporate gibberish documents, give us a thumbs up and consider joining our Discord channel where we discuss stuff like this all the time. The link's in the description below. This report covers MUFG's performance for the fiscal year ending in March of 2025. Let's dive into what this financial giant has been up to. First, the report starts with formalities. No new stock offerings are planned, so no need to discuss that. Then, it confirms that MUFG's common stock trades on the New York Stock Exchange in Tokyo Stock Exchange. Important but not groundbreaking news. Now onto the juicy bits. The report outlines various risk factors that could affect MUFG's business. It's like their own what could go wrong list. Let's examine what those are. A primary concern, Japan's economic conditions. A big piece of their assets are tied with the country. So if Japan's economy tanks, MUFG would feel the effect. They're also worried about things outside their control. Natural disasters, terrorism, and conflicts could all disrupt operations. High on their radar are non-performing loans, those loans that might not be paid back. If this number goes up, it's a red flag, meaning money is tight and can affect their business. MUFG also talks about challenges with their partnerships, specifically mentioning Morgan Stanley and First Sentier investors. If the performance of either of those companies decreases, it puts MUFG in a bad position. Keeping up with regulations is a universal headache. MUFG needs to maintain specific capital ratios. And if they don't, it could trigger regulatory intervention. They also need to account for these changes to laws and how they could end up impacting their numbers. Finally, MUFG says that they are exposed to many global risks. These can affect supply chains or trade, which can end up affecting their bottom line due to changes in laws, regulations, or accounting methods. We will see how they mitigate these risks later in the report. Time to get into the important financial numbers. MUFG reports large investments in Japanese government and corporate bonds. We are going to skip this in the interest of time since it's largely just assets that are fairly stable. MUFG holds a variety of pension plans, so let's take a look at some of the most important things pertaining to that. What this really means for the audience is benefits related to retirement for former Accession employees. It seems like these benefits programs are broken down both locally in Japan and for foreign plans. Next, the method in which they do their accounting gets a lot more complicated, but basically breaks down how reliable their accounting may be. A high number using fair value inputs level 3 would generally mean that they are using their best guess, while a level 1 input uses actual market trader data. However, most of this section goes deep into the weeds, so we will skip this. MUFG has a big portfolio with large amounts of securities. They use a special rule called alternative measurement for some non-mark table equity securities member. This is tricky because there is no active market for these investments, but it's better than the previous method. All that probably seemed boring, but the way they account for things or don't account for things can actually affect their bottom line. Just because they don't talk about it does not mean nothing actually happens. One of the things that is looked at highly by people like Warren Buffett is loans past due. Those are a sign that people find difficulty paying back their loans. Let's take a look at the state of MUFG's loans. They even break this down more granularly, talking about what their average historical loss information is on a forecast member basis for commercial card and residential portfolio segments. The fact they are segmenting this and even providing a loss forecast goes to show how seriously MUFG takes these. So let's look at that information. As of March 2024, their geographical distribution of domestic and foreign not part due was roughly equal, with 34 take, but here is where it gets tricky. Zooming in on problems within these commercial portfolio segment, accounts receivables, what ends up greatly affecting them is financing receivables that are greater than 3 months past due member, which could mean these are customers that won't pay their debt anytime soon. They get even more granular than that. MUFG also has what they call a minimum member calculation for commercial industrial loans to better understand where things are. But while that segmentation is interesting, it requires a finance degree to read what these mean. All that matters is that they seem to seriously monitor loan defaults. MUFG is keeping a close eye on borrowers who are likely having financial struggles by having a credit allowance to borrowers experiencing financial difficulty, with what kind of loans they may need to underwrite and what risk category these may eventually fall under. Even further, the report dives into many subsectors within the risk areas, and and they seem to be very careful and meticulous about planning. They seem to even calculate potential gross charge-offs and how it will affect their books, to varying degrees depending upon their home country. Now, let's briefly talk about their physical assets. They own almost ½ trillion yen of land, which has gone up slightly. Same goes for their buildings and equipment member categories, but the construction and Trozu member category also saw a small increase. MUFG breaks its business into business segments with specific focuses and strategic goals. And we can generally see the revenue they produce broken down quite nicely. The goal of these is to further integrate the expertise and capabilities of their subsidiaries. These segments are made up of the retail and digital, global corporate and global commercial banking units. But some are more important than others to follow depending on what happens. For example, MUFG is taking a beating on the asset management and investor services, but it's doing gangbusters in retail. Back into the accounting and terminology. MUFG needs to do an alternative measurement for its non-marketable equity securities member, but they are doing it for now. This just is a call out that some assets are difficult to value. Back to the company operations, MUFG got some benefits from the deal with Yuan Corp with a few interesting categories here. As part of getting shares of Yuan Corp, common stock received member from them. Very interesting assets to be able to receive as part of a deal. The company also talks about other parts of its portfolio, such as Cavacom Securities and other Jibun Bank Corporation transactions with some specifics regarding numbers into 2025 and their relation between Japanese national bonds. MUFG also has this idea of another subsidiary with bonds for Talase member, some weird specifics here that I'm not familiar with. This indicates how MUFG is structured to meet key debt regulations and ratios. Speaking of regulation adoption, MUFG is required to state the effects of cumulative effect period of adoption adjustment member. MUFG must also account their financial difficulties member through excluding some low-end held for sale and others. The report also includes a nice explanation of credit losses and portfolio information, which they must then include how much it cost them for their currency portfolio segment member and other business segments. A good indication of how effective their financial controls work is where their non-performing loans member are for 2023, 2020, 2024, and 2025. And after stating all these numbers, the company once again highlights all the assumptions that may change and affect their plans as required. They ended up acquiring Link Administration Holdings, a market services firm with a nice history. Also, Wealth Navi is getting acquired by MUFG, which will probably be a catalyst for their digital transformation that they keep mentioning. Interestingly, it seems MUFG are continuing certain measurements with the alternative measurement member. Since there are non-marketable equity securities member, they must forecast scenario forecast member and their average loss in card portfolio and resident portfolio. For all their assets and debts, MUFG must classify each one based on their various past financial assets as well. And they must state and secure various other government entities. Alright, so MUFG has a lot of different pots they keep clean, and the report breaks this all down. What is this company's overall direction? It's difficult to say. There are sections and areas that seem very well managed, while others seem neglected, and they account for it. Some obviously huge and complex, and they have many moving parts. Some areas are down. This may be due to the regulatory requirements where some of their internal controls are not up to level based on regulatory scrutiny, and is affecting how their numbers are viewed by rating agencies. They need to take more of a hands-on approach as their plan and capital ratio is not working as well. All of it in the medium and long terms, MUFG should be fine. These risks that they disclose are a lot of the same types that affect large financial institutions. So those are always something investors should consider when investing. Alright, that's our breakdown of MUFG's annual report. What's your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments if this analysis was valuable. Hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.